818 9543 27003 2009 9241 4524 13282 2022 14142 7148 22569 2010 7148 3343 12375 2023 9417 1645 18744 Average the 1st of January 1998 to the 31st of December 2023 13,389.37 514.4 20,143.6 History, edit. The first European traveller to mention the Ganges was the Greek envoy Megasthenes, ca. 352-90 BCE. He did so several times in his work. Indica, India, again, possesses many rivers both large and navigable, which, having their sources in the mountains which stretch along the northern frontier, traverse the level country, and not a few of these, after uniting with each other, fall into the river called the Ganges. Now this river, which at its source is 30 stadia broad, flows from north to south, and empties its waters into the ocean, forming the eastern boundary of the Gangaridai, a nation which possesses a vast force of the largest sized elephants. Diodorus 2.37. In 1951 a water-sharing dispute arose between India and East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, after India declared its intention to build the Farakar barrage. The original purpose of the barrage, which was completed in 1975, was to divert up to 1,100 m/s, 39,000 cu ft/s, of water from the Ganges to the Bajarathi-Hooghly distributary to restore navigability at the port of Kolkata. It was assumed that during the worst dry season the Ganges flow would be around 1,400 to 1,600 m/s, 49,000 to 57,000 cu ft/s, thus leaving 280 to 420 m/s, 9,900 to 14,800 cu ft/s, for the then East Pakistan. East Pakistan objected and a protracted dispute ensued. In 1996 a 30-year treaty was signed with Bangladesh. The terms of the agreement are complicated, but in essence, they state that if the Ganges flow at Farakar was less than 2,000 m/s, 71,000 cu ft/s, then India and Bangladesh would each receive 50% of the water, with each receiving at least 1,000 m/s, 35,000 cu ft/s, for alternating 10-day periods. However, within a year the flow at Farakar fell to levels far below the historic average, making it impossible to implement the guaranteed sharing of water. In March 1997, flow of the Ganges in Bangladesh dropped to its lowest ever, 180 m/s, 6,400 cu ft/s. Dry season flows returned to normal levels in the years following, but efforts were made to address the problem. One plan is for another barrage to be built in Bangladesh at Panjshir, west of Dhaka. This barrage would help Bangladesh better utilize its share of the waters of the Ganges. Religious and cultural significance, edit. See also, Ganga in Hinduism. Embodiment of sacredness, edit. The Ganges is a sacred river to Hindus along every fragment of its length. All along its course, Hindus bathe in its waters, paying homage to their ancestors and their gods by cupping the water in their hands, lifting it, and letting it fall back into the river. They offer flowers and rose petals and float shallow clay dishes filled with oil and lit with wicks, diyas. On the journey back home from the Ganges, they carry small quantities of river water with them for use in rituals. Ganga Jal, literally the water of the Ganges. The Ganges is the embodiment of all sacred waters in Hindu mythology. Local rivers are said to be like the Ganges and are sometimes called the local Ganges. The Godavari River of Maharashtra in western India is called the Ganges of the south or the Dakshin Ganga. The Godavari is the Ganges that was led by the sage Gautama to flow through central India. The Ganges is invoked whenever water is used in Hindu ritual and is therefore present in all sacred waters. Despite this, nothing is more stirring for a Hindu than a dip in the actual river, which is thought to remit sins, especially at one of the famous tirthas such as Varanasi, Gangotri, Haridwar, or the Triveni Sangam at Prayagraj. The symbolic and religious importance of the Ganges is one of the few things that Hindus, even their skeptics, have agreed upon. Jawaharlal Nehru, a religious iconoclast himself, asked for a handful of his ashes to be thrown into the Ganges. The Ganga, he wrote in his will, is the river of India, beloved of her people, round which are intertwined her racial memories, her hopes and fears, her songs of triumph, her victories and her defeats. She has been a symbol of India's age-long culture and civilization, ever-changing, ever-flowing, and yet ever the same Ganga. Avatarana Descent of Ganges, edit. In late May or early June every year, Hindus celebrate the Karonazrai and the rise of the Ganges from earth to heaven. The day of the celebration, Ganga Dashahara, the Dashami, 10th day, of the waxing moon of the Hindu calendar month Jaistha, brings throngs of bathers to the banks of the river. A dip in the Ganges on this day is said to rid the bather of 10 sins. Dasha equals Sanskrit 10, Hara equals to destroy, or 10 lifetimes of sins. Those who cannot journey to the river, however, can achieve the same results by bathing in any nearby body of water, which, for the true believer, takes on all the attributes of the Ganges. The Karonazrai is an old theme in Hinduism with a number of different versions of the story. In the Vedic version, Indra, the lord of Swarga, heaven, slays the celestial serpent, Vritra, releasing the celestial liquid, Sama, or the nectar of the gods which then plunges to the earth and waters it with sustenance. In the Vaishnava version of the myth, the heavenly waters were then a river called Vishnupadi, Sanskrit, from the foot of Vishnu. As Lord Vishnu as the avatar Vamana completes his celebrated 3 strides, of earth, sky, and heaven, he stubs his toe on the vault of heaven, punches open a hole and releases the Vishnupadi, which until now had been circling the cosmic egg. Flowing out of the vault, she plummets down to Indra's heaven, where she is received by Dhruva, once a steadfast worshipper of Vishnu, now fixed in the sky as the pole star. Next, she streams across the sky forming the Milky Way and arrives on the moon. She then flows down earthwards to Brahma's realm, a divine lotus atop Mount Meru, whose petals form the earthly continents. There, the divine waters break up, with one stream, the Bhagirathi, flowing down one petal into Bharatvarsha, India, as the Ganges. It is Shiva, however, among the major deities of the Hindu pantheon, who appears in the most widely known version of the Avatarana story. Told and retold in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata and several Puranas, the story begins with a sage, Kapila, whose intense meditation has been disturbed by the 60,000 sons of King Sagara. Livid at being disturbed, Kapila sears them with his angry gaze, reduces them to ashes, and dispatches them to the netherworld. Only the waters of the Ganges, then in heaven, can bring the dead sons their salvation. A descendant of these sons, King Bhagiratha, anxious to restore his ancestors, undertakes rigorous penance and is eventually granted the prize of Ganges' descent from heaven. However, since her turbulent force would also shatter the earth, Bhagiratha persuades Shiva in his abode on Mount Kailash to receive the Ganges in the coils of his tangled hair and break her fall. The Ganges descends, is tamed in Shiva's locks, and arrives in the Himalayas. She is then led by the waiting Bhagiratha down into the plains at Haridwar, across the plains first to the confluence with the Yamuna at Prayag and then to Varanasi, and eventually to Ganges Sagar, Ganges Delta, where she meets the ocean, sinks to the netherworld, and saves the sons of Sagara. In honor of Bhagiratha's pivotal role in the Avatarana, the source stream of the Ganges in the Himalayas is named Bhagirathi, Sanskrit, of Bhagiratha. Redemption of the Dead, edit. As the Ganges had descended from heaven to earth, she is also considered the vehicle of ascent, from earth to heaven. As the Triloka Patagamani, Sanskrit, Triloka equals 3 worlds, Pata equals road, Gamani equals one who travels, of the Hindu tradition, she flows in heaven, earth, and the netherworld, and, consequently, is a tirtha or crossing point of all beings, the living as well as the dead. It is for this reason that the story of the Avatarana is told at Shraddha ceremonies for the deceased in Hinduism, and Ganges water is used in Vedic rituals after death. Among all hymns devoted to the Ganges, there are none more popular than the ones expressing the worshipper's wish to breathe his last surrounded by her waters. The Ganashtakam expresses this longing fervently. O Mother! Necklace adorning the worlds, banner rising to heaven, I ask that I may leave of this body on your banks, drinking your water, rolling in your waves, remembering your name, bestowing my gaze upon you. No place along her banks is more longed for at the moment of death by Hindus than Varanasi, the great cremation ground, or Mahashmashana. Those who are lucky enough to die in Varanasi are cremated on the banks of the Ganges, and are granted instant salvation. If the death has occurred elsewhere, salvation can be achieved by immersing the ashes in the Ganges. If the ashes have been immersed in another body of water, a relative can still gain salvation for the deceased by journeying to the Ganges, if possible during the lunar fortnight of the ancestors in the Hindu calendar month of Ashwin, September or October, and performing the Shraddha rites. Hindus also perform Pinda Pradana, a rite for the dead, in which balls of rice and sesame seed are offered to the Ganges while the names of the deceased relatives are recited. Every sesame seed in every ball thus offered, according to one story, assures 1,000 years of heavenly salvation for each relative. Indeed, the Ganges is so important in the rituals after death that the Mahabharata, in one of its popular slokas, says, if only one bone of a deceased person should touch the water of the Ganges, that person shall dwell honored in heaven. As if to illustrate this truism, the Kashikanda, Varanasi chapter, of the Skanda Purana recounts the remarkable story of Vayaka, a profligate and unrepentant sinner, who is killed by a tiger in the forest. His soul arrives before Yama, the Lord of Death, to be judged for the afterworld. Having no compensating virtue, Vayaka's soul is at once dispatched to hell. While this is happening, his body on earth, however, is being picked at by vultures, one of whom flies away with a foot bone. Another bird comes after the vulture, and in fighting him off, the vulture accidentally drops the bone into the Ganges below. Blessed by this event, Vayaka, on his way to hell, is rescued by a celestial chariot which takes him instead to heaven. The purifying Ganges, edit. Hindus consider the waters of the Ganges to be both pure and purifying. Regardless of all scientific understanding of its waters, the Ganges is always ritually and symbolically pure in Hindu culture. Nothing reclaims order from disorder more than the waters of the Ganga. Moving water, as in a river, is considered purifying in Hindu culture because it is thought to both absorb impurities and take them away. The swiftly moving Ganga, especially in its upper reaches, where a bather has to grasp an anchored chain to not be carried away, is especially purifying. What the Ganges removes, however, is not necessarily physical dirt, but symbolic dirt. It wipes away the sins of the bather, not just of the present, but of a lifetime. A popular paean to the Ganga is the Ganga Lahiri, composed by a 17th century poet Jagannatha who, legend has it, was turned out of his Hindu Brahmin caste for carrying on an affair with a Muslim woman. Having attempted futilely to be rehabilitated within the Hindu fold, the poet finally appeals to Ganga, the hope of the hopeless, and the comforter of last resort. Along with his beloved, Jagannatha sits at the top of the flight of steps leading to the water at the famous Panchganga Ghat in Varanasi. As he recites each verse of the poem, the water of the Ganges rises one step until in the end it envelops the lovers and carries them away. I come to you as a child to his mother, begins the Ganga Lahiri. I come as an orphan to you, moist with love. I come without refuge to you, giver of sacred rest. I come a fallen man to you, uplifter of all. I come undone by disease to you, the perfect physician. I come, my heart dry with thirst, to you, ocean of sweet wine. Do with me whatever you will. Consort, Shakti, and Mother, edit. Ganga is a consort to all three major male deities of Hinduism. As Brahma's partner, she always travels with him in the form of water in his Kamandalu, water pot. She is also Vishnu's consort. Not only does she emanate from his foot as Vishnupadi in the Avatarana story, but is also, with Sarasvati and Lakshmi, one of his co-wives. In one popular story, envious of being outdone by each other, the co-wives begin to quarrel. While Lakshmi attempts to mediate the quarrel, Ganga and Sarasvati heap misfortune on each other. They curse each other to become rivers, and to carry within them, by washing, the sins of their human worshippers. Soon their husband, Vishnu, arrives and decides to calm the situation by separating the goddesses. He orders Sarasvati to become the wife of Brahma, Ganga to become the wife of Shiva, and Lakshmi, as the blameless conciliator, to remain as his own wife. Ganga and Sarasvati, however, are so distraught at this dispensation, and wail so loudly, that Vishnu is forced to take back his words. Consequently, in their lives as rivers they are still thought to be with him. Shiva, as Gangadhara, bearing the descent of the Ganges, as the goddess Parvati, the sage Bhagiratha, and the bull Nandi look on, circa 1740. It is Shiva's relationship with Ganga that is the best known in Ganges mythology. Her descent, the Avatarana, is not a one-time event, but a continuously occurring one in which she is forever falling from heaven into his locks and being forever tamed. Shiva is depicted in Hindu iconography as Gangadhara, the bearer of the Ganga, with Ganga shown as spout of water rising from his hair. The Shiva-Ganga relationship is both perpetual and intimate. Shiva is sometimes called Umaganga Patiswara, husband and lord of Uma, Parvati, and Ganga often arouses the jealousy of Shiva's better-known consort. Ganga is the Shakti, or the moving, restless, rolling energy in the form of which the otherwise reclusive and unapproachable Shiva appears on earth. As water, this moving energy can be felt, tasted, and absorbed. The war god Skanda addresses the sage Agastya in the Kashikand of the Skanda Purana in these words. One should not be amazed that this Ganges is really power, for is she not the supreme Shakti of the eternal Shiva, taken in the form of water? This Ganges, filled with the sweet wine of compassion, was sent out for the salvation of the world by Shiva, the Lord of the Lords. Good people should not think this triple-pathed river to be like the 1,000 other earthly rivers, filled with water. The Ganga is also the mother. The Ganga matter equals mother, of Hindu worship and culture, accepting all and forgiving all. Unlike other goddesses, she has no destructive or fearsome aspect, destructive though she might be as a river in nature. She is also a mother to other gods. She accepts Shiva's incandescent seed from the fire god Agni, which is too hot for this world, and cools it in her waters. This union produces Skanda, or Kartikya, the god of war. In the Mahabharata, she is the wife of Shantanu, and the mother of heroic warrior patriarch, Bhishma. When Bhishma is mortally wounded in battle, Ganga comes out of the water in human form and weeps uncontrollably over his body. The Ganges is the distilled lifeblood of the Hindu tradition, of its divinities, holy books, and enlightenment. As such, her worship does not require the usual rites of invocation, avahana, at the beginning and dismissal, visarjana, at the end, required in the worship of other gods. Her divinity is immediate and everlasting. Ganges in Classical Indian Iconography, edit. 1. Photograph, 1875, of Goddess Ganga, Gupta period, 5th or 6th century CE, from Bisnagar, Madhya Pradesh, now in Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. 2. Goddess Ganga with left hand resting on a dwarf attendant's head from the Rameshwar Temple, Ellora Caves, Maharashtra, 6th century. 3. The goddess Ganga stands on her mount, the Makara, with a kumma, a full pot of water, in her hand, while an attendant holds a parasol over her. Terracotta, Ahichitra, Uttar Pradesh, Gupta, 5th century, now in National Museum, New Delhi. 4. The goddess Ganga, right, in Tribhanga pose with retinue. Pratihara, 10th century, now in National Museum, New Delhi. Early in ancient Indian culture, the river Ganges was associated with fecundity, its redeeming waters, and its rich silt providing sustenance to all who lived along its banks. A counterpoise to the dazzling heat of the Indian summer, the Ganges came to be imbued with magical qualities and to be revered in anthropomorphic form. By the 5th century CE, an elaborate mythology surrounded the Ganges, now a goddess in her own right, and a symbol for all rivers of India. Hindu temples all over India had statues and reliefs of the goddess carved at their entrances, symbolically washing the sins of arriving worshippers and guarding the gods within. As protector of the Sanctum Sanctorum, the goddess soon came to be depicted with several characteristic accessories. The Makara, a crocodile-like undersea monster, often shown with an elephant-like trunk. The kumma, an overfull vase, various overhead parasol-like coverings, and a gradually increasing retinue of humans. Central to the goddess's visual identification is the Makara, which is also her vahana, or mount. An ancient symbol in India, it predates all appearances of the goddess Ganga in art. The Makara has a dual symbolism. On the one hand, it represents the life-affirming waters and plants of its environment. On the other, it represents fear, both fear of the unknown which it elicits by lurking in those waters, and real fear which it instills by appearing in sight. The earliest extant unambiguous pairing of the Makara with Ganga is at the Udayagiri caves in central India, circa 400 CE. Here, in the cave V, flanking the main figure of Vishnu shown in his boar incarnation, two river goddesses, Ganga and Yamuna, appear atop their respective mounts, Makara and Kurma, a turtle or tortoise. The Makara is often accompanied by a Gana, a small boy or child, near its mouth, as, for example, shown in the Gupta period relief from Visnagar, central India, in the leftmost frame above. The Gana represents both posterity and development, Adbhava. The pairing of the fearsome, life-destroying Makara with the youthful, life-affirming goddess speaks to two aspects of the Ganges herself. Although she has provided sustenance to millions, she has also brought hardship, injury, and death by causing major floods along her banks. The goddess Ganga is also accompanied by a dwarf attendant, who carries a cosmetic bag, and on whom she sometimes leans, as if for support. See, for example, frames 1, 2, and 4 above. The Purna Kuma or full pot of water is the second most discernible element of the Ganga iconography. Appearing first also in the relief in the Udayagiri caves, 5th century, it gradually appeared more frequently as the theme of the goddess matured. By the 7th century it had become an established feature, as seen, for example, in the Dashavatara temple, Deoghar, Uttar Pradesh, 7th century, the Trimurti temple, Badali, Chittagong, Rajasthan, and at the Lakshmaneshwar temple, Karod, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh, 9th or 10th century, and seen very clearly in frame 3 above and less clearly in the remaining frames. Worshipped even today, the full pot is emblematic of the formless Brahman, as well as of woman, of the womb, and of birth. Furthermore, the river goddesses Ganga and Saraswati were both born from Brahma's pot, containing the celestial waters. In her earliest depictions at temple entrances, the goddess Ganga appeared standing beneath the overhanging branch of a tree, as seen as well in the Udayagiri caves. However, soon the tree cover had evolved into a chhatra or parasol held by an attendant, for example, in the 7th century Dasavatara temple at Deoghar. The parasol can be clearly seen in frame 3 above, its stem can be seen in frame 4, but the rest has broken off. The cover undergoes another transformation in the temple at Karod, Bilaspur, 9th or 10th century, where the parasol is lotus-shaped, and yet another at the Trimurti temple at Badali where the parasol has been replaced entirely by a lotus. As the iconography evolved, sculptors, especially in central India, were producing animated scenes of the goddess, replete with an entourage and suggestive of a queen en route to a river to bathe. A relief similar to the depiction in frame 4 above, is described in PAL 1997, p. 43 as follows. A typical relief of about the 9th century that once stood at the entrance of a temple, the river goddess Ganga is shown as a voluptuously endowed lady with a retinue. Following the iconographic prescription, she stands gracefully on her composite Makara mount and holds a water pot. The dwarf attendant carries her cosmetic bag, and a female holds the stem of a giant lotus leaf that serves as her mistress's parasol. The fourth figure is a male guardian. Often in such reliefs, the Makara's tail is extended with great flourish into a scrolling design symbolizing both vegetation and water. Kumbh Mela, edit. Main article, Kumbh Mela. Kumbh Mela is a mass Hindu pilgrimage in which Hindus gather at the Ganges River. The normal Kumbh Mela is celebrated every 3 years. The odd, half, Kumbh is celebrated every 6 years at Haridwar and Prayagraj. The Purna, complete, Kumbh takes place every 12 years at 4 places, Triveni Sangam, Prayagraj, Haridwar, Ujjain, and Nashik. The Maha, Great, Kumbh Mela which comes after 12 Purna Kumbh Melas, or 144 years, is held at Prayagraj. The major event of the festival is ritual bathing at the banks of the river. Other activities include religious discussions, devotional singing, mass feeding of holy men and women and the poor, and religious assemblies where doctrines are debated and standardized. Kumbh Mela is the most sacred of all the pilgrimages. Thousands of holy men and women attend, and the auspiciousness of the festival is in part attributable to this. The sadhus are seen clad in saffron sheets with ashes and powder dabbed on their skin per the requirements of ancient traditions. Some called Naga sannyasis may not wear any clothes. Irrigation, edit. The Ganges and its all tributaries, especially the Yamuna, have been used for irrigation since ancient times. Dams and canals were common in the Gangetic plain by the 4th century BCE. The Ganges-Brahmaputra basin has a huge hydroelectric potential, on the order of 200,000 to 250,000 megawatts, nearly half of which could easily be harnessed. As of 1999, India tapped about 12% of the hydroelectric potential of the Ganges and